Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Schneider Springs Fire virtual public meeting. Today is Wednesday, September 8th, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Barth. I'm a public information officer with Pacific Northwest Team 2. Again, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to encourage folks to go ahead and put their questions and comments into the chat. We'll be happy to answer those as we go through the evening. As of this morning, the Schneider Springs Fire is 97,288 acres. 17% containment at this time. And again, this morning, there was 739 personnel assigned to the fire. Again, just to remind folks, please go ahead and put your comments and questions in the chat. At the end of the virtual public meeting and the presentations, we will be doing live question and answers. And again, after this meeting is ended, we will be continuing to answer those questions as best we can. The meeting will be recorded and we will be posting it to Facebook here on the Schneider Springs Fire Facebook page. We will also be posting it to the Schneider Springs YouTube channel, and both of those will have closed captioning so you can view it later and share it with others that might be interested. Tonight for the meeting, our agenda, we have our incident meteorologist, Donnie Dumont, followed by our fire behavior analyst, Mark Atwood, then our operations section chief, Kyle Cannon, followed by Washington DNR. We're going to be hearing from Miles Pollock, the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest Natchez District Ranger, Aaron Stockton, followed by our incident commander, Rob Allen. And again, at the end of the meeting, we will be facilitating question and answer period. So with that, I'd like to ask Donnie Dumont, our incident meteorologist, to come give us an update. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Donnie Dumont. I'm the incident meteorologist. I'm just gonna start off saying where we are, where we've been, and then where we're going when it comes to the weather front. So where we were, we just came off a very hot, unnormally hot for this time of year, 2-3 day period. So good news is that really hot in weather is going to start to trend down. Okay. So what ended up happening during that hot streak we just had this past week, we had about 3-4 days. Not only was it hot, it was extremely dry. So when it was up on when you got about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, the relative humidity, which is a key indicator for fire weather conditions, was extremely dry. It never really got even above 30-35%, which is extremely abnormal, up around 5,000-6,000 feet up in the big growth forest. So the good news is that really dry air is gone. The bad news is now we just have dry air. So it's still dry is really what it comes down to. So going ahead over the next few days, I'm not really expecting any critical fire weather conditions. And when we say critical fire weather conditions, we're talking about the alignment of the winds and the dryness all coming together at the same exact time. What we're going to have is one of each pretty much going over the next few days. So what we're expecting is it going to be kind of hot again? It's going to be kind of dry, but it's going to be kind of breezy. It's not going to be really strong winds. Going into Friday, there actually is some moisture coming to the state of Washington, but it actually looks like it's going to miss us completely. It's going to go further to the east. So again, it looks like we're going to be high and dry on the rain front. The good news is we're going to get a little kind of weak Pacific, we call it trough coming in, and that's going to kind of cool it down, give us a little bump of relative humidities, and we're going to come into more seasonal conditions through the weekend. So that's good news. The bad news is it's still zero rain. And going into the beginning of next week, looking ahead, we're actually going to start trending back up in temperatures, and we're going to get a little bit drier. But overall, it's not going to be anything like we just experienced the last few days. So no critical fire weather conditions coming, but the big takeaway is no rain is coming either. That's all I have. Have a good night.
Hey, good evening, Mark Atwood, Fire Behavior. So predicted fire growth correlated with what Donnie just spoke about is we're going to look at continuing to see the fire back down the slopes, have rollout material that's going to roll down the hills, get established in dry fuels, and continue to flank and back and make short, small uphill runs back into the black. This is particularly applicable to the natural fire. That's not our ignition operations that might be taking place on the incident. So in areas where there's wind, slope, and fuels available, we have seen some pretty decent growth over the last few days where we've had a few environmental factors line up. With the upcoming forecast, the temperatures trending down, the RHs, like I said, don't anticipate a ton of significant growth in relationship to that. So low to moderate fire behavior throughout most of the fire, with areas starting to fill in. Particularly the three areas, I'll just quickly mention them, that we do anticipate watching fire behavior growth is starting up in the northwest corner in Division Alpha area, up in the Bumping River corridor area. The fire that got established on the north side of the Bumping River corridor, that's likely to continue to move upslope to the ridge lines, with head fire and flanking fire, kind of rapid rates of spread up to the ridge lines, and then where it loses its alignment to start backing down the slopes and hillsides. Kind of working or to address a little bit what's going on in the Division Foxtrot, the northeast corner of the fire. Areas are continuing to fill in. Primarily that's been dominated by management ignited fires. And so that's kind of hard to address, but those areas with unburned fuel are going to continue to fill in and burn out and make it a more secure containment line. To quickly address the Division Zulu, the south west side of the fire, that's going to continue to move back into the wilderness country. It's been backing up the Rattlesnake Creek drainage for the last several weeks, and foresee that that's going to continue to happen for the next week or so with the given weather patterns that we're seeing. So that's all I have.
Good evening. I'm Kyle Cannon, Operations Section Chief with the Pacific Northwest Team 2. So a little bit of big picture, when we first arrived almost 3 weeks ago, our focus was protecting the infrastructure and the structure, private property along the Highway 12 corridor, the private property along the 410 corridor, as well as the private property down into the Bumping. Over the last week or so, based on a lot of good work from the firefighters, as well as some help from the weather, we've been able to make some really good progress, not only on the south end of the fire along Bethel Ridge, but also within the Natchez River corridor on the southeast corner of the fire. So at this point, our focus has shifted up here into around Jefferson Helibase and Lost Creek. And we're putting a lot of effort into holding that piece and keeping fire out of the private property and structures in along the Natchez River. At this point, we've got a good solid line down into the Lost Creek to the south, and we've been working some burning down towards Edgar Rock and into the rock face in there. And right now, this evening, we're planning to finish up cleaning up some of the unburned fuel between our main control line there along the Natchez River and in Lost Creek down into the north side of Lost Creek and tie that in. We'll also be looking at completing some burning in here along the 1706 road system to try to clean up some of that unburned fuel in the upper part of Lost Creek as well. Moving to the north, we do have a primary control line here along the structures with private property and structures and private property with some structure protection in there. But at this point, we're focusing on completing an additional indirect control line that utilizes the 1706 and the 1709 road system, the Swamp Creek and Devil Creek systems, to try to keep fire further to the west, away from the structures in the Natchez River Valley. And we're continuing to do that with heavy equipment today. Moving around into the Bumping area. We've been watching and monitoring this fire moving along in the wilderness there on the south side of the Bumping River. Yesterday, unfortunately, we did pick up some significant spots to the north of the Bumping River and the Bumping Road in the Chipmunk Road system. We had good line around it last night and had planned to hold on to it during the day. Unfortunately, weather conditions created some spots that went out into Fife Creek over here. And at this point, we've got quite a few hundred acres on fire to the north of the Bumping River, moving up towards American Ridge. We do have structure protection in place all along the Bumping River into Goose Prairie and down here towards Bumping Lake with hose lays and sprinkler kits and what's needed in there to protect those structures. We're also looking at preparing the structures here along the 410 corridor towards Pine Needle as well. We have had extensive use of aviation the last couple of days with fixed wing scooper aircraft, as well as quite a few helicopters. I think we've got 9 helicopters at this point. We've also been using UAS systems, drone systems, to do both monitoring infrared, as well as doing some aerial firing with that UAS. So that's been a good tool for us. So our focus again remains on protecting the structures here in the Natchez River, as well as here in the Bumping and along the 410 corridor, moving west, towards Chinook Pass. Down on the south side of the fire, as I mentioned, we put a lot of work in here and things are looking pretty good. At this point, the whole southern edge along Bethel Ridge, all the way to the Wilderness boundary is in patrol status with some mop up in places where we have a little bit of residual heat. There is some interior burning that continues to happen in here in the Little Rattlesnake. For the most part, it's worked down to the Little Rattlesnake to the south. We are seeing some movement up in this area and some smoke come out of there. We do have an indirect control line that's prepared all along through Rimrock, down through the Wildcat Road system. We did repair that washout in there, but it will be a temporary repair. It won't be a permanent repair in there, but we are able to get our equipment and our personnel in there safely to do that work. And that's mostly finished and we're working our way back out. Also, we do have personnel that are working out in here in the wilderness along the Burnt Mountain Trail out in this direction, putting in some hand line as well as plan to do some firing to try to keep the fire from moving south back in towards Rimrock Lake. Moving out to the west, our focus has really been again to the south and back to the north. We do feel like this mountain range in here makes a very good indirect or a barrier in there for fire spray to keep it from moving to the west. But we are looking at the fire that continues to burn here in Thunder Creek, keeping an eye on that. And again, this piece in the upper Rattlesnake, trying to make sure that doesn't come around and cause us problems to the south. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Miles Pollock with the Washington Department of Natural Resources. First, I just wanted to acknowledge the really good work that's been done by firefighters and the team to secure this ground that Kyle was just talking about and to really work the priorities that the team has mentioned from the start of this incident. This has been a long time for those of us who live locally, over 30 days with this incident being out here on the landscape. And the work and the priorities that have been laid out to you in the previous meetings, I think it shows in the product that is coming together here. It's not to say that we're out of the woods, and Kyle just went through around the fire and explained those areas that still present challenges that firefighters will continue to work. I also wanted to express my appreciation again for the community and the support that the community has ongoing throughout this entire incident. And then I wanted to close with just reiterating the closures to DNR lands east of the Cascades continues to be in effect. I would, as we go into hunting season and other things that take people outdoors, I would recommend that you check DNR's website to look for any changes to those closures and to make sure that you're going to recreate and to access those lands that are open to do so. I'll be around for any questions. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Stockton, the District Ranger on the Natchez Ranger District of the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest. I wanted to talk to you about the closures in effect on Forest Service lands, as I have in past meetings. On the last meeting, we talked about downsizing of the closure that we had done and hoping that that was going to be the last iteration of a closing for a while. However, as has been outlined earlier, we did see some activity in the Bumping River corridor that has jumped beyond some lines that have triggered us to need to close some additional areas. So I'll explain what those are. First, I just wanted to emphasize, though, the areas that we do have open for use and recreation, and that is everywhere south of Highway 12 down to Conrad Meadows, including Rimrock Lake. We just ask if you are utilizing the lake to just keep that situational awareness that we may still be using that for air support, and we need to make sure that we're out of the way for that aircraft if they need to land on the lake. Also, the Little Natchez area north of Road 1900 is still open, and some portions, the west portions of North Peak Wilderness, as well as the Pacific Crest Trail that has remained open throughout this incident. So the new areas that we're going to close, I think we're pulling up a graphic, it's that area north on American Ridge down to Highway 410. And then we're going to take the closure, it's going to go up the 1900 road, which is the Little Natchez Road, to the 1902. It'll travel west along the 1902 into the 951A and down into the 953 system and back down to Highway 410. So those boundary lines the 1900 and the 1902 and the 951, 953, those are still open. You can travel on those, but anything south of those roads is within the closure area, including any dispersed campsites. So we ask that you stay out of those areas. We'll monitor the situation, and as things either progress in a fashion that might necessitate us to expand that closure further, we'll take that action, or hopefully we can look at downsizing that when we have a little more control in that area. So there's also a question in the chat of, have any cabins been lost? And no structures have been lost throughout this incident. I think we're on day 35 now. And so that's a great success. So I'll be around if you have any other further questions. Thanks.
And good evening again, everybody. I'm Rob Allen. I'm the incident commander for Pacific Northwest Team 2. Happy to be with you here again tonight. Couple of things that we wanted to talk about here. As Kyle was talking about where we have our containment lines and where we have things in place. You won't see it on this map, but some of the things that we work on is we call a PACE model. There's a primary, alternate, a contingency, and emergency lines. And we have plans in place for all of these pieces where if we have fire drop across or come across one of our containment lines, where we can back up and move into those places and pick things up. Part of what we've been doing is we're working with the county and emergency services, DNR and everything else. Is we've changed up some of the evacuation levels that we have right now. In our main area where we've been focusing, where the fire came across, because it came across the bumping river there, not as much that the homes in Goose Prairie are in danger right now of burning up, but it is one way in and one way out. And right now we have snags falling across the road. We have a lot of firefighters working that area. We've asked the folks there to hang till we can get the road opened up again. And then we'll get people out that want to leave out of that spot, and then get that back into place where we can continue to work on that area there. Also in the Lost Creek area around the Jefferson helibase area there, we put that back into a level 3 because we're actually actively burning behind people's homes right now. As we're trying to bring that fire around and back up the Lost Creek drainage and back up onto the plateau a little bit. As we're making that turn and working in there, really it's not as much, again, that we're worried about homes burning up, but if it does start to pick up or we start getting a lot of spot fires in and around the homes, we really need our firefighters to be able to move and be able to react to where there's activity. And we certainly would hate to be trying to get a bulldozer down the road or an engine, or trying to move along and then run into somebody coming out of their home and getting jammed up. So we asked if we do that, and we moved it up. And then as the fire came over, we've been looking at the cabins and the stuff up at Pine Needle along the upper part of the 410. As we're moving in that direction, we'll be starting to do structure protection up there. Not only is it DNR and the federal agencies that are working up there. We were contacted today. Some of you might have seen private industry or private insurance engines running around here. The last time things were busy, they left when the lever dropped down. They're back now too, helping us out, assessing those cabins and doing some work up there also. We've put that into a level 2 as we're watching where the fire moves on that other side of the bumping river. As we move around and we look at some of the other places that we do have fire going, again, we talked about it last time, that just because all of this is one pink blob doesn't mean that everything is burned. It's very mosaic. I was out driving around in parts of it the other day. There's some places where it has burned really hot. There's other places where it's been a fire that's done along and cleaned up a lot of the stuff that was in the woods right now. So there are a lot of places that are really being positively affected by what's going on, as well as the animals are still moving around and running into elk out in this area here and in a few other places also. So they're getting out and about. I think one other thing I'd like to talk about, just on a fire this size, we're almost at 100,000 acres, at 97,000 acres. We would normally, on a fire this size, if we didn't have all the other fires going on in the region, Oregon, Washington, and in Northern California, we would probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,100 to 1,400 people on this fire. We're working with just under 700 people right now. So that's meant that we've had to evaluate where we can be effective and where our highest priorities are. As Kyle said, we started on this corner because of the fire activity at the time. The weather conditions were telling us to be there. It's shifted now. We've got that looking good. We've moved everything up north. Fire behavior and weather conditions are telling us we need to be up there now. We'll continue to focus on those pieces up there as we move forward and try to get around. As we start looking at all those things too, part of what we've done, we've been here now almost 21 days. We normally go on a 14-day cycle with incident management teams so that we can get a little bit of rest and then come back in or go to the next assignment. We will be starting to work through a transition here the next couple of days. Northwest Team 10 will be coming in to take over from us and focus still in on these same things and these same priorities that we've been working on now. You'll start to see that transition as we do that and we get close to that time. Some of the people that you've seen up here presenting and moving on have had to go home also to get some downtime. We'll get a few days off and then get reassigned to another incident right after we're done here. But that's the cycle that we're in right now. So again, we couldn't do this without the help from the local population, the local county folks, our DNR partners. It takes everybody to work together as a team to make this happen. We get assistance from everybody out there as we're working around, and the support from the local communities has been fabulous. So we really appreciate all that. Thank you for your time tonight. I hope we answered your questions, and we'll be around for a few more. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks to all our speakers. Again, I appreciate the information that you're able to provide to our audience, and thank you, audience, for all your questions and comments in the chat. We did try to get those to our speakers ahead of time, so hopefully a lot of those were answered by those presentations and the remarks that they made. As an example, one of those questions, how long will the fire be managed by this type 1 team, and will the new team be a type 1? As you just heard Rob mention that we're approaching our day 21, and so we have a few more shifts, and then there will be transition to Northwest 10, as he mentioned. You will still continue to be able to receive information about the Schneider Springs fire through the familiar channels that you're used to getting that, and so not to have a disruption in how you're receiving information and updates about what's happening on the Schneider Springs fire. Some of the other questions we have, I would like to ask Aaron Stockton come on up and from the Forest Service and share some responses. Aaron, the first one was, could you tell us about Sawmill Flats?
So Sawmill Flats Campground is outside of the closure area. However, most of our campgrounds on the forest are run by concessionaire. If you're familiar with that process, you know how that works. And a lot of the concessionaires during the closures had to lay their workers off that would take care of those. And then some of the Forest Service from campgrounds, we actually don't have trash service right now. We don't have employees. They're focused on the fire to actually do cleaning and stocking of materials and things like that. So a lot of campgrounds that are outside of our closure area, we're just not able to effectively run in a safe, clean manner right now because of the fire and needing to focus on that. So you'll find a lot of those remain closed, and that'll probably be the case throughout the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. We did have another question for you as well, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind stand up here. Can we access and use the cabins on the Little Natchez in the Little Natchez cabin tract, edge of the closure area starting off of Forest Road 19?
So if I'm correct in my recollection, I believe that those cabin tracks are south of 1900. So that would actually be within the closure area. And so that does include any permitted uses, including recreational residences. But if conditions are safe and you contact the office, as we've done with other rec residents permit holders, we can allow you to go in for a limited time to retrieve any valuables or things like that you would like to get out of those cabins. But yes, if it falls within that closure area, that use is not available at this time.
Great, thank you very much, Aaron. And just to add a little bit more, the Forest Service has a interactive website, interactive map on a website where you can look at the current fire area closure throughout the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest. There is also a Schneider Springs fire public information map that is interactive. And so the updated fire closure map, area closure map that you saw while Aaron was speaking earlier, that will be available in that new layer. So you can actually use that to zoom in and see very specific in relation to where other activities or recreation opportunities might be. So, and that link is on our NC webpage for Schneider Springs Fire. There's another question came in about, please provide detailed explanation of different evac levels on Highway 410. So I did want to let folks know, also on NC Web, we've posted the map that was shown when Rob was talking about those changing evac levels, and we will continue to share and post information from Yakima Valley Emergency Management. Tony Miller, their emergency manager, was unable to be here tonight, but again, we'll have that map available to you so you can look at the map and get some additional details. Next, I'd like to ask Kyle Cannon, our operations section chief, to come up for a few questions. Kyle, the first one is, do you anticipate 410 will remain open?
So, at this time, based on where the current fire perimeter is and the fire behavior we're seeing from Little Natchez all the way south, we wouldn't really anticipate any closure. However, with that spot that's come over to the north side of the bumping river and moving up towards American Ridge, once it crosses to the north side of American Ridge, that becomes pretty problematic, right? Very steep ground, chances of burning material rolling down towards the highway are pretty high. So I would say if and when the fire gets to the north of American Ridge, we'll be looking at whether we can safely allow people to pass through 410 to the west towards Chinook Pass or not. So we'll see how that plays out, but there's definitely a concern in that area, as you can imagine.
Great, Kyle. I do have a few more questions for you. If you could address what kind of protection has been done in the Cliffdale area?
So Cliffdale area, we've had some time to prepare in there, which is good. So there's hand lines and dozer lines to protect the backside of the structures all along that west side of the Natchez River. We also have sprinkler systems with pumps and hose lays that also protect those structures back in there. So those areas, we've removed all of the, as much as we can anyway, of the vegetation around the structures that might threaten, as the fire burns in there to get into the structure, and hopefully increase the moisture level in that area significantly with our hose lays.
Great. And one more for you, Kyle, if you wouldn't mind. The plan for containment suppression in Thunder Creek area, if you could just talk a little bit more about Thunder Creek east of Bumping.
Sure. So at this point, the fire hasn't moved all that much in this part of Thunder Creek in here. We are watching it as it, starts to get onto this east slope. As it moves up onto the ridge there, we'll be looking pretty closely at, how rapidly that fire backs towards our main control line, which is a fuel break and the bumping road right along this area. So that's our main control line and containment line at this point. And most of our actions won't really involve having firefighters up into that steep, difficult ground where it's difficult to extract them if they get injured, all those kind of things. So our focus will remain here along this road and trying to keep the fire from getting into the structures to the west of the bumping road.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. And then just one more question for Rob Allen, if you wouldn't mind. Rob, so if you could just talk a little bit about what the future looks like in long term.
Yeah, good evening again. I saw that a few of the questions were, and the questions that we get quite often too is, how long will this be burning and when will this go out? And really, again, back to that resource need for other fires and other places that you've seen in California and on the news where they're losing homes, we're having issues. Part of what we're looking at right now is we're looking into fire this size, not being able to get around every single square inch. And to when we get to a place like this, we've called contained, is an area that crews have gone through, and literally for us to call this contained and feel really confident that it's not going to go anywhere. Firefighters have walked along that edge, they've taken their gloves off and they've hand felt the ground looking for things that are warm. It's one of those things that I used to do that all the time. And I used to always think as I'm out there, we can fly a drone on Mars, but I'm going to go out and hand feel every square inch of this edge to make sure that it's out. So easy to do in places like this where we're able to get in dozer line, a little harder when you get way out here into the wilderness. So these natural features help us out to be able to have that place there that'll be contained. But what that does mean that we're not going to be able to touch every single square inch of this is that we're still going to be seeing smoke all the way until we get that season ending event. When we start to see rain, we start to see snow, and there'll be places on this fire that we'll end up seeing smoke again, probably next spring. When the snow melts out. The local folks here from the Natchez Ranger District will be keeping an eye on it. We'll be keeping an eye on it from the forest. We'll be able to respond to places that do have those things that pop up again next year. But but there just are areas on this fire that we won't ever get to. But what our primary focus is right now is to keep it away from the improvements and the things that we've built in that we value that are along the 410 corridor, the cabins that are in and along Bumping Lake and Goose Prairie area. And as we reach out and find new areas that we need to get to, we'll be making sure to focus in on those. But parts of this fire, like we said, not all of this is completely damaged. Some of it is doing the exact same type of burning that you would see if we were doing our prescribed burns that you've gotten used to having us do in this area, where we go in and we clean up parts of the forest by using fire. And this is a part of that for us in some of these areas. We're working really hard to get around as much of it as we can with the resources that we do have, taking everything into account with our aviation, our engines, our equipment, our dozers, our people from all over the country are here helping. And we'll continue this mission right on until we either get around everything that we need to get around that we can, or weather comes in and gives us that hand also and does part of that work for us. So I just wanted to touch in on that a little bit, and thanks for your time tonight.
All right, I wanted to thank everybody who's been participating with us, engaging online during this live event, and remind folks that this will be recorded. It will be posted with closed captioning on Facebook, on our Facebook page, as well as on YouTube. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for good questions. Before we close out, I just want to remind folks there were some questions about current containment maps and current products. And I do want to remind folks that you can get those maps daily, the updated fire perimeter maps with showing where the containment is. We have a daily product where we provide an update about what the fire is doing. Those are available on Facebook as well as on INCIWeb. And again, you can go to INCIWEB, search that in one of your search engines. Look for Schneider Springs Fire when you get there. And again, we have maps posted there as well. And again, here on the Facebook page, we do have a large volume of videos that are available. You can watch and see some of the actions and the work that's been done over the last several weeks. And you can find that on the YouTube channel. If you do have questions and you want to ask us questions, you can phone us at 509-653-1468. Again, 509-653-1468. Or if you want to send us an email, ask us a question, you can reach us at 2021.schneidersprings@firenet.gov. And then again, the social media channels that we talked about. As was mentioned previously, this is the last virtual public meeting for Pacific Northwest Team 2. You will continue to receive information on the channels that we've been sharing it and on all the methods we have. We will still have folks going out on the 410 and the 12 highway corridors, providing information on several signboards for folks, for residents that are living in that area and want to get information that way. But again, I want to thank everybody for their participation and questions tonight. And we will continue to monitor and answer questions as they come in throughout the night. Thank you.